player reaches the end of his career, all that's left to show is his legacy. However, just because you light the world on fire in your prime, it doesn't mean your name will go down in history as one of the best to ever do it. In this video, we'll analyze 5 careers that were defined by what happened in their final seasons. Ronaldinho is one of the most iconic footballers in the sport's history. He inspired an entire generation of kids in the early 2000s with his warm smile and dazzling tricks, while also helping to catapult Barcelona to the best period in their history. But as soon as Guardiola took over as Barcelona's head coach, the standard changed, and players who were fond of partying were cut from the squad no matter how good they were. Ronaldinho was only 28 at the time, and many clubs still thought highly of him. He eventually chose AC Milan, but despite the hype surrounding his transfer, it actually marked the start of AC Milan's downfall. You see, Ronaldinho received a huge salary, setting a precedent for the following big transfers that Milan made. However, those transfers didn't translate into sporting success, and the club eventually lost much of its financial power. But Ronaldinho's story doesn't end here. After a lukewarm stint in Italy, the Brazilian star returned to his home country, where he was still able to contribute significantly and win titles in his 4 seasons with Flamengo and Atlético Mineiro. Even when his form had dramatically declined, he was still revered as a god in Mexico. While that could be seen in a positive light, to me, it's just disappointing that a player who by the age of 26 had already won the Ballon d'Or, the Champions League and the World Cup fell off so quickly. By 28, he was already past his prime in Italy, and by 30, he wasn't consistent enough to compete in Europe anymore. And even though he only announced his retirement in 2018, from 2016 onwards, he was essentially an attraction in football events. Ultimately, it's almost impossible to put Ronaldinho in the GOAT conversation because he simply never cared enough. He will go down as perhaps the most gifted footballer of all time, but also one who always preferred nightclubs over early mornings on a training ground. Lack of motivation and discipline are 2 of the biggest career killers, but wrong moves in the market can absolutely tarnish a player's legacy as well. Victor Valdés was Barcelona's #1 keeper for over 10 years and took part in the club's most iconic era, winning 6 La Liga titles and 3 Champions Leagues. While he was never the first choice for his national team, that doesn't diminish his legacy. He had to compete against Iker Casillas, a challenge many brilliant keepers like Ter Stegen, Ederson and Jens Lehmann can relate to. So it came as a surprise when in 2014, Valdés, who was only 32 at the time, announced he would leave Barcelona at the end of the season. It was clear that he needed a new project to prolong his career away from the pressure of competing at arguably the best club in the world at the time, and it looked like he was about to join the newly reached Monaco with the hopes of guiding them to the Ligue 1 title. But an ACL injury in March 2014 prevented that from happening. With a 9-month recovery ahead, Monaco pulled out of the deal, leading Valdés to sign with Manchester United. Initially, the Red Devils only offered them the chance to complete his rehab at the club, but eventually offered them an 18-month deal to compete with compatriot David De Gea. Now, I don't know about you, but that looks like career suicide. And unsurprisingly, Valdés left the club a year and a half later, having played only 1 full match and 16 minutes as a substitute. By that point, his reputation had already taken a hit, and since Man United wanted to get rid of him at all costs, Valdés, now 34, was offloaded to the Belgian league to play for Standard Liège on a 6-month loan. The fresh start didn't work out, and Valdés played only 8 matches for Liège before the club decided to cut his time as a starter short and give more playing time to younger players. His last dance as a pro player came in the 2016-17 season when he signed with the recently promoted Middlesbrough as one of many Spanish signings that year. But despite the heavy investment in new signings, the club had an abysmal season and was immediately relegated to the Championship. Valdés is probably unknown to many recent football fans who know about the legends of Xavi, Iniesta and Messi, but have no idea who was standing in goal behind them. But can you really blame them? His career was a story of 2 halves, one as a bona fide Barca legend in the top 10 for most games played, and the other as an average backup keeper thanks to poor career management. So far, we've only talked about stories of 2 halves where the latter ruins a player's legacy. However, there are many instances where the opposite occurs, and one such case is that of Pep. For most of his career, Pep was seen as a tenacious but overly aggressive centre-back who wasn't afraid to play dirty. He was hated everywhere, in Spain by everyone except Real fans, in Europe by most clubs, in Brazil for choosing Portugal, and even in Portugal by those who didn't support Porto. But as the years went by, fans started to notice that Pep was much more than just a bully. He didn't take it personally when Real Madrid decided to replace him. Instead, he took that opportunity to build his legacy with a new group of fans and to give back to the club that launched them into superstardom. In the process, he continued to be Portugal's best performing defender and guided FC Porto to 2 league titles before he decided to retire this summer after yet another fantastic international tournament. Most Portuguese fans now acknowledge him as the GOAT in his position. The hate has subsided, and against all odds, his departure from Real Madrid in 2017 is the biggest reason behind it. It's extremely hard to remain at a high level past the age of 40. Pep certainly did that, while Ibrahimovic, not so much. But that doesn't mean that his last years as a football player didn't positively impact his legacy. Similarly to Pep, Ibra always sparked controversy. Not with aggressive tackling, well, not always, but with his brash and arrogant personality that always made you wonder if he really cared about the club he was representing. And when he went to LA Galaxy in 2018, I think we all felt that his career was just 1 or 2 seasons away from the end. His fire would surely die down, and with such a charismatic personality, Zlatan would be in Hollywood in no time. However, that wasn't good enough for the Swedish Lion. By the end of his contract with Galaxy, his fire was still very much alive, and Zlatan knew exactly where to use it to help an old club that was clearly in need. At 38 years old, Ibrahimovic signed with AC Milan, and from that moment on, the Swedish legend embarked on one last journey with only one goal in mind: to bring AC Milan back to its former glory. Zlatan promised, and as usual, Zlatan delivered. Not only did he score 37 goals in his late 30s, but he also passed on his passion to a sleeping giant, bringing him back to the Champions League after almost a decade-long absence, and most importantly, winning the elusive Serie A title before retiring like the king he always was. Some players hold on for too long and ruin their legacy. Others make the wrong moves and fade into obscurity, and some mature and change how they're perceived. But what can you say about a player whose last season fools you into thinking he was greater than he actually was? Zinedine Zidane is one of the best French players of all time and easily in the top 3 of his generation. If I were to define Zidane to someone who never saw him play, I would say he was guaranteed to show up in the most crucial moments with the class and elegance you'd expect from someone considered the greatest of all time. More than trophies, Zidane collected moments that will always stand the test of time. When kids learn about Zidane, they'll look up his 2006 World Cup match against Brazil or his volley against Leverkusen. Not the matches where he was a non-factor on the pitch, but the problem arises when people let perception become reality. Nobody can take anything away from Zizou, but his legacy is portrayed in a much bigger spotlight than it actually deserves. Many people would laugh if you said De Bruyne, Modric or Xavi were better players than Zizou, but that's exactly the truth. All of them were consistently better than Zidane, even if they might not have as many highlight reel moments as the French legend. Besides, retiring at 34 after one of the best World Cup performances of all time will always mess with the public's perception of value. But tell me, if you could bring back just one of these 5 legends, who would you pick and why? Let me know your opinion in the comments, as I always go through every single one of them. Like this video if you want me to make more content like this, and subscribe to Throne FC for the best man-made football content on YouTube. As always, thanks for staying with me until the end, I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one.